Well, good morning and welcome to Cityline. It is great to be in your home. We have a wonderful hour ahead of us. Later on, we'll be talking with, get ready, I'm going to say her name, Kim Archer. Yes, I can hear the screams already in Tacoma. The Old Town Summer Concert Series. Kim is back. And she's producing that, among other things that are just musically delightful. So we'll have her in the house. And then she's going to play us out with one of her original songs. Karen White, who is the Deputy Director of the YWCA, will be here to kind of do a recap of what the year has been like and also what we can expect moving forward. And then South End Neighborhood Council, Andrea's here to talk about some of the things that they are doing to keep that area really beautiful. And boy, do they have a passion for it. And then with me right now, as you may have seen on the wide shot, is one of our council members. And I think that my producer, Fred Jones, says it best when he says that John Hines always has a smile on his face. So please join me in welcoming to the comfy couch, Council Member John Hines. Welcome, my dear.
Hey, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you, and you represent District 1.
Yes, I do.
I want to put a little shout out for District 1. So, John, let's talk about, if someone says, where is District 1? Or if I'm closing my eyes and I can see a map, where are you? What do you tell them?
Easiest way to tell people is you think of the University of Puget Sound.
Yep.
It's everything west of there. And then if you go down to Fircrest University Place, it's everything north of that. So kind of that north and west part of the city of Tacoma, that's District 1.
That is a fabulous neighborhood with some really great people in it. You were elected in 2019.
Yep.
What inspired you to run for office?
It's a great question, Amanda. I get asked this quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I'll tell two stories to kind of tell how I got here. So first story is 9th grade, Lincoln High School, turn of the century, right? I'm walking down the hallways and Mr. Liebrick, Don Liebrick, says, hey, John, come over here. And I'm like, oh, walk over. And he's like, hey, you know, I talked to your football coach and he says, you seem to be pretty smart and you're a good leader. I'm leading this group called Youth Leading Change. I'm supervising this group. Would you be interested in being part of it? And I, you know, being the 9th grader I was, like, yeah, Mr. Liebrick sounds great. And so I signed up for that, not really knowing what it was. And the only thing that really sold me was just 2 days out of school for training, leadership training. I was like, all right, sounds great. So I went to this training. It was 2 days of kind of how to be a leader, how to work with others, kind of talking about community issues. And it was no more than a week or two later, I was in elementary schools across the city, like Whitman and Seward and Mann, talking to 5th graders about making smart choices as they go into middle school and high school. And so that kind of early exposure to kind of leadership and working with others in the community really kind of planted a seed with me to think like, this is something I'd really like to do. You know, I like helping people. I like answering questions. I like, you know, trying to see where people are confused and kind of pointing them in the right direction or, you know, helping them navigate. So that was kind of the first one. The second story is kind of fast forward a little bit. I go to the University of Puget Sound here in Tacoma, and I'm walking by the job board. And back then we actually had a board that had jobs posted on it.
With tax.
With tax on it. And there was a tack on the board and said, interested in volunteering for the city council. So yeah, that's interesting, you know, and I kind of thought about it. And, you know, my experience at Safe Streets, I had met some city council members way back in the 90s. And I said, okay, great. So I pulled it down, and little did I know, I went and met a council member. Her name was Julie Anderson. And if you know that name, she's our Pierce County auditor right now.
She is.
But she was on the council back then, and I worked with her for about a couple months my senior year in college, where I went to meetings with her, and you know, she had me go to different neighborhood councils, but she couldn't go to everyone. She was an at-large representative, and so I went to. I distinctly remember going to East Side Neighborhood Council and going to a TNT editorial board meeting, and just kind of learning from her kind of what she did on city council. So kind of that early exposure to community service, and then kind of seeing what Julie did as a council member, really kind of pointed me in the right direction. Like, hey, this is something I think I'd like to do. And then after that, I was a high school teacher for about 10 years, and I was a high school civics teacher, government teacher.
Oh, I love that.
And so I taught kids for a long time about the importance of being civically engaged and volunteering in their community. And, you know, I think pretty close to the end there, one of my students said, hey, Mr. Hines, you talk about this all the time. What, are you ever going to run for something? I'm like, well, I've thought about it. Like, well, you'd be really good. You should do it. And so that kind of happened right around the time that I ran for council the first time. So I ran in 2015. Was unsuccessful, but it really kind of sparked in me that I really did want to do it. I did some more community involvements. I was on the library board. I was on the YWCA board kind of in the interim. And I ran again in 2019 and was elected.
I love that. So let's not forget, as we're going back in the time machine, Councilmember Hines, rumor has it you were on Jeopardy. Tell us about that just real quick. But
Oh.
I was like, you were on Jeopardy. I mean, come on, I'm the biggest nerd.
Yeah. No, I was on Jeopardy in 2012. I was in the teachers tournament, and so I was on the show actually twice. And so the teachers tournament is, you play multiple rounds. But I tell people I won an episode of Jeopardy, so I can say I'm a Jeopardy champion. But I won that episode, and I made it on a second time. And I lost in the second episode, and I lost on a random question. And I tell my students all the time in history class, I'd say, you think this random information is not important, but not knowing that James A. Garfield never gave a State of the Union address cost me $15,000.
Well, there we go.
Just try to pay attention to everything here. But
Yeah.
It was a great experience, lifelong dream. I grew up watching Jeopardy every night at 7:30 with my family, and so that chance to be on was great.
So, lifelong dream to be on Jeopardy and also to be in politics. You are a young man. Your life is half over, so you got to keep going. You got to have some new goals here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the most visible, and when I really want to underline that part of the City Council job is the City Council business meeting Tuesdays at 5 p.m. I rarely miss one of those. I love them. When I first moved to Tacoma 26 years ago, the next day I turned on my television and all I could get was Channel 12, and that's how I learned about TV Tacoma and also our city. So there's been a little moving around because of COVID. So the question is the public able to attend now these sessions at 5 p.m. every Tuesday?
They are. The chambers are back open, so people can attend in person. They can give testimony in person. They can do public comment or a community or virtual forum twice a month. But we're also still keeping the hybrid option. So as with many things in COVID, we learned that there are some good things that came out of it. And one of them is kind of having that hybrid ability to participate in your city council business meeting. So before you had to come into the chambers and be there at 5 o'clock and sign up for public comment in order to participate. But now, you can participate from the comfort of your home, you can call in. And so we're seeing a lot more people engaged, which I think is great. We want more people engaged at the local level with politics. I talk to people about the problems you can point to, the problems you can put your arm around. Some of the issues we're facing in our country and our world are so big that they're overwhelming. Like, where do I even start? Where do I engage? But at the city council level or the city level, there's places where you can plug in. We can put you to work. We can put you on a board or a commission or a committee. You can pick a policy you want to work on. I live in the same neighborhood as many of my kids. Many people. You can stop me in the grocery store if you feel like you want to talk about it. So. You can come back in person to our meetings and participate. You can also participate online, and I'm hoping people will continue to do so. So
let's talk about, before we talk about some of the committees that you serve on, one of the things right now, and today, July 7th, actually today's the 7th, is the deadline for submitting your application to be considered to take the open council seat. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, how is that going?
Right now we kind of had a conversation at council about kind of what we're looking for, maybe potential new council members to join the council, but really haven't been too engaged with the process so far. People have been talking to me and talking to lots of council members, asking questions, really want to know what the job of a council member is, which I think is great. I want more people to know what it is and what we do. So we'll see here pretty soon who has finished their application and who's submitted it, and then we'll kind of move on to the process of selecting our new member.
Wow.
And that person will serve from when they're appointed until December of 2023. And they can run for re-election if they'd like to. I'm hoping that we find someone who really loves it and gets involved and wants to run again. So
absolutely. So share with us some of the events that will be coming up over the next few months, because summertime's a big time for districts and neighborhoods to get together. We often hear about National Night Out. So in your district, what can we expect to see, and what should we mark on our calendar?
Yeah, the big event coming up, Proctor Arts Fest, is coming up here this summer, and that's a big community event in the Proctor neighborhood district. So that's coming up in July. I don't know the exact date, Amanda. I can get that later, but I'm sure someone could put it on the screen if they needed to. But that's a really big one in July. It's been postponed last year because of COVID, so it's great to have it back. National Night Out's coming up in the first week of August. I'm also on the Safe Streets board. So I went from youth leading change as a high schooler to now sitting on the board, and that's a big Safe Streets event. So I'll be out throughout the community kind of visiting those parties, and that's the first Tuesday of August. Beyond that, I think I like to always highlight the kind of the regional events we always have. So we have the Proctor Farmers Market that happens every Saturday. We also have the Point Ruston Farmers Market that happens every Sunday. And I would be remiss without pointing out, I talk about Point Defiance as if it's a District 1 asset, even though it is a community asset. But with Owens Beach opening back up again, I have lots of memories as a kid. Like that was my beach, the one I went to all the time. And so that being back open is going to be great. So there'll be a lot of other events that are happening, but more than anything, I have 2 little children, and so we're outdoors a lot, enjoying the parks. So either Point Defiance, Titlow, Jefferson, all over the place.
Absolutely. So last minute here, I wanted to devote to what you think are some of the challenges facing District 1.
Yeah, I think District 1, if you ask some of my constituents, they're probably similar to the ones you hear citywide, right? So concerns about homelessness and housing, concerns about public safety, public works, roads, and things like that. But one thing I would boil down to that I think is more salient for District 1 often is kind of housing. What does housing look like? How expensive is housing? Where can people go? Those are real important questions. And it's become more salient because I have a lot of constituents who have lived there for a long time, and they get really concerned about, well, I have children, I have grandkids. They'd like to live in North Tacoma, West Tacoma, and I just don't know where they're going to be. I don't know where they're going to live, if they're ever going to buy a house. And so I think those are some important questions that we're having as council-wide, but for District 1 have become more and more kind of important in the last few years.
Yeah, and boy, you said the sweet word there, housing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one thing when I had former council member Lillian Hunter on, because she was the at-large person that had to get a real 30,000 point of view on things. Housing is on everybody's lips, and they're not making new land.
No, no, and I think people want to stay in the community, which is great, but recognizing that, the way things are currently structured is if you either can live in an apartment or a single-family home. And, people, as they age through their lives, as they go from children to adults to parents to, more experienced members of our community, they have different housing needs. They have different places that they want to live, but they still want to stay in the community. So I think one thing I've been talking to my constituents about is, well, how do we provide more places, different types of places for people to live so that you don't have to leave District 1, North Tacoma, West Tacoma, or any part of the city because your situation has changed.
Right.
You can kind of continue to transition in place.
So we're going to leave it, that little hope-filled marker right there, because I want you back on the couch very soon. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me, Amanda.
My pleasure, and thank you for all that you do for the city of Tacoma. We have much more to come on Cityline. Don't go away. We'll be right back.